Welcome back to KEI Builds. This is mine and Matt's 1986 Honda Acty, which we've recently fitted our Honda Fireblade Motorbike engine. But now with the engine mounted, there's a load of work we need to do. In this video, what we're going to look at is the gearbox and how we're going to change gears. As we now have a motorbike engine, we do essentially have a sequential gearbox. So the aim is to have a similar setup to this. Your traditional sequential gearbox simply pulls back or pushes forward for up, and then the opposite for down gear. Motorbike gearboxes are slightly different. This one is one gear down and the rest up, so we've got to bear that in mind, but we should be able to use a similar concept of that, a sequential gearbox. So without further ado, let me show you what we need to do to get this working, and then we can crack on. So the position of our handbrake isn't really going to change. This is our previous handbrake. We can't really utilize this much, as previously there was some sort of long bar that went from here all the way back to the engine. What we do have to do is link up the selector, which is on the left hand side of the engine, come up and come through to the gearbox. So essentially going to make our own new mechanism here for the handbrake. What I'm going to do first is create a plate, which is basically will fit on here enough to bolt up the holes before we start to make the mechanism for our gear stick. Just like that, the first little bit is done. It needs to be tidied up eventually, but that is bolted solid onto there. Now, what the plan is essentially to do is to mount a 22mm bar, which will essentially be our gear stick. And what you would do is pull the clutch in on the lever and pull back or push forward to go up or down the gears. We are waiting on the pipe for me to do that yet, so what I'm going to do is move on to the back now, as we are going to have to modify all of the gearing and selecting system compared to the standard Honda Fireblade gear select. So this is the gear selector for the bike. What essentially happens is there's a gearing system which mounts onto there, and as you press the lever up and down using this, it basically twists this. So what we essentially have to get it to do is try not to damage the teeth, is get the gear stick to go up a gear and down a gear. The gear stick is essentially going to be here, so it doesn't really make much sense for us to move the position of this much further from where it currently is. What we have got to bear in mind is the prop shaft is also relatively close to the selector. So what I think I'm going to do is get relatively straight down the middle and try and modify the piece which goes onto there, which is this piece here, so that what I'm going to do is extend it out here and take it in a spit. So what will happen then, we'll have a pivot around this area to change gear. It's a little bit complex, but this is the first piece we're going to modify, so let's get on with doing this. It may seem a little bit complicated, but bear with me. It will start to become more clear what we're doing the more we sort of start to get into this. But let's get this first piece done and see what it looks like. So we have essentially extended the bracket. I'll get this one mounted on. I'll show you the difference of this compared to the other one. It is a little bit messy at the minute. It's just tacked together. We got to have to basically fully weld it and grind everything down to make it look nice and tidy, but essentially this is the idea. So let's see what it looks like compared to the standard one. So as you would have seen earlier, this is the standard piece, is just the clamp that goes onto the adjuster, and then a little bracket going onto this. So just to show you the difference, as you can see there now, the bracket used to be fairly flat, but all we've done is extended the join between the two there, because now that means that this gear selector is going to come up through the gap there nicely, as previously if it was down in there, all of the diff and everything was just in the way. It's a little bit too close to the diff as we probably would like it. What we can do is point this out, as we do have a bit of swivel on this here now, but it does fit in there pretty well. Next is basically create a bracket which goes from this bar here down. I do have the original selector off the bike. What I might do is straighten this bar here so it's nice and straight with the bracket, because what I think we're going to have to do is essentially have something similar to this, and what will happen, this will be connected to the piece we've just put on, and as we change gear, this will pull and rotate the selected down there. Again, it is a little bit complicated. When we start to put things in, it will start to make sense. So we've had a couple of parts delivered now. I have a Honda Fireblade clutch lever. This is going to take a little bit of modification. I am going to have to do things like straighten the lever out, but we'll do that when it comes to it. I also have the tube which we're going to be using as our actual gear stick, and I have an actual Honda Fireblade clutch cable. I'm hoping that this will fit. The clutch cable will only have to go from this section here just to the right hand side of the engine, just down by there. That bracket there is actually for the Fireblade as well, so I'm hoping the cable will just about reach and go up to the clutch lever. But what I think I'm going to do first is have a look at mounting our gear stick into a position where we can start to link everything together. So let me show you on the whiteboard the kind of design we're going for. So taking a look at this, the sort of dashed sort of rectangle is the gear stick. This is the plate that we made on the bottom previously, as you would have seen. So what I want to do is create some sort of tubing either side and then some sort of reinforcement. But this is kind of the design we want to go for. So let's just crack on, see what we can build and go from there. So after a bit of work, this is kind of what we've come up with as a first draft or sort of first idea. It just basically swivels along this point here. I'll show you it when it's in the car. I've left excess on the bottom then because the plan is basically to drill multiple holes on here to have more adjustment for how much throw we have on the gear stick. This will all be tidied up, braced up, and obviously painted, and is very just tacked together, very brief. So let me bolt it in the car and show you what it looks like in the car. So that is the gear stick now loosely bolted in. What I have got to do is add 2 bolts to the back. There was 2 bolts where these pipes are here, but I've decided to put that in the middle. So what I'm going to do is just rivet or weld bolts underneath here to allow to attach on the back. And there is 3 on the front. I shouldn't need any more than that. It's not perfectly straight at the minute. There is a bit of adjustment. But what you can see now is essentially we have whatever play we need. So that is the Fireblade gear lever also in. I am going to have to slightly straighten it out. This is kind of upside down how you would normally grip it on the bike. So for us to hold it this way, it's a little bit far to reach. So just by straightening this lever up a bit, I think that will just make it a lot easier to reach. So that is the clutch side of things pretty much done. We've got to do some tidying up there. We've also got to create a pivot on the rear frame. So that's what we're going to start to look at next. The only concern really, obviously we don't have any seats in here at the minute. So the seating position is going to change. The standard seats, they're just a bench. So the only thing will be you sat further forward. So what I think I might try and do is figure out where the center of the throw is and might slightly lean the gear stick forward for where we're going to mount it. So it's a fresh day and we move on to the last final part of all of this gear linkage to get everything connected up together. So let me just give you an overview of where we're at so far, and then we can get this final piece fabricated, mounted in, and hopefully everything works all together. So far we have our plate which we made previously connected to our gear stick, the Honda Fireblade gear lever. The only thing we have to do around here is tidy up this cable somehow, but we're not really sure which way we want to go about doing that yet. Moving on to the back then, so we have our linkage down there which we modified. So as you can see, we extended that piece there to bring it out a little bit. So the final piece we have to do is create a pivot point around this area here, which is what we're going to do using the original lever. I straightened it out, cut it off, I got it tidied up, and I'm going to drill probably 3 holes on here for different adjustment to adjust the throw of the gear stick. So all we got to do is come up with a way to mount this roughly in this area here so that we can join this piece down onto that piece. The piece joining this and the one at the bottom of the engine, they're like threaded bars, but we don't actually have anything long enough as These are reverse threads in here. I'm not sure why they're really reverse threads, but what I think I may have to do eventually is kind of drill this out and just put a solid bar and weld that into this, and the same on the piece on the bottom. So what I think I may do for the time being is put the original bars back in. They don't actually reach each other, or they might just overlap, but there's no way of connecting them, so I might just put them together and weld them into one piece just to test fit and try everything. But without further ado, let's make a bracket for this, take some measurements and start to get this piece mounted into the truck. So we've made a fair bit of progress. We mounted the pivot point onto the frame, which you would have seen, and I've also added now a joiner, or a way of connecting this to that pivot piece. This is the piece which will go from the gear stick all the way back to the engine. So let's just get this piece in, and hopefully this doesn't really have to come back out for the foreseeable future. So everything regarding the gearing now on the truck is now bolted together. I spent a couple of days messing with a few things, as there was a lot of slack and a lot of play here and there. So what I've done is also welded all of the bits up that were tack welded everything fully, made a few minor adjustments, but now it is changing gear really well. The only concern we do have at the minute is that the clutch, there isn't really much resistance in the clutch at all. There was before, but for some reason now all of a sudden there's not, so whether or not something's not sat right internally. But after speaking to someone, the clutch on these are pretty easy to have a look at, so worst case we'll just have to take the casing off the side, get the clutch off, and we may even just upgrade or change the clutch while we're at it. But so far it is working perfectly, so let me show you some of the amendments we've made and how it looks, as this is pretty much going to be it until we sort of start to get things running, as we may have to make adjustments later down the line. But let me show you how good it looks. So in the cab, not a lot has changed apart from welding this up fully. I've added some bigger bolts. I riveted the center console there and added these M8 bolts. The only thing we have maybe decided was to maybe shorten this handbrake cable down, just cut a little bit off the top maybe, but we're not quite sure on that yet. And we still have to get the bike grip to go onto the gear stick. So moving on to the engine then, there are a few minor adjustments that we have made. Previously, the pivot point here I had at the top, but unfortunately where I did that, the gearing was simply the wrong way round. By having the one point above the pivot, when we pulled the gear stick backwards, that actually went down a gear, whereas we thought it was going to go up. So all we've had to do is flip the pivot round, and now what we have to do to change gear is go down into first from neutral, and then there's 5 gears up to 6th gear. Essentially we have now a sequential gearbox which will work similar to this. There's a couple of things that we'll need looking at in the future. This section here, as you can see, I've just joined the 2 shorter bars together with this nice thick bar. They are fully welded, but it doesn't look the most presentable, but will be changed later down the line. That's not so easy to change, as the 2 pivots on the ends, one of them is a reverse thread, so we can't really change that for just one piece, as we somehow have to reverse the thread on the one end of a bar, so we'll probably have to make something of our own somehow. We have added one more addition to this off camera, and that is this sort of guide that's down the middle. What was happening was, when you were pulling the gear back, this bar, as it was so long, was tending to pull up and down. We are going to add some rubbers to stop the noise of it moving. That has now taken out a hell of a lot of play in the gear stick. It's still not 100%, but I think once you are sort of rolling as well, when you slightly mess with the drive shaft, it's easier to change it into gear. And obviously when you're driving, the engine is rotating, so it is easier to change gear. So it is working pretty good. So let me just show you how it works as well. So as you can see, we're currently in neutral as the drive shaft spins freely. So let's get inside and show you how it changes. So I'll stick a camera at the back as well. And you don't really need the clutch for this, as obviously the engine is not rotating or any of that. So currently we're in neutral. So the plan will be is to go forward into first and then up the gears all the way up to fifth. Yeah, that's it. So that's in sixth gear now, sorry. And then simply go back down to first and then half a click back into neutral. So far that is pretty much working perfectly. There are loads of minor adjustments we have to make, but it's also really difficult with it being stationary. It doesn't really select into gear very well as you need to rotate the drive shaft. So hopefully when it's driving, it will just be much smoother to change gear. We obviously don't want to be stuck somewhere where we can't change gear, so we will be able to revisit this and make sure everything's working perfectly. But so far, touch wood, it is working really well. There are still some things, like I said, we have to do yet, but we're always taking things on board. And if there's any way you think we can make this better, then please feel free to let us know in the comments. That's all I'm going to cover in this video for the gear stick so far. We have a whole load of things we have to do yet. We have to sort of get this bike back up and running, do a load of wiring, all the coolant lines. We still have to put this truck on air suspension, which will be coming shortly, hopefully. So make sure to go and drop a subscribe if you would like to see how we get on with this truck in the future. Now that the engine is in place, that was a big milestone. So now we can actually get all of these little tasks on the side done out of the way. But that is it. We hope you've enjoyed the video and we'll catch you in the next one.